good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. This is Dr. Sarah Renee Langley, your host and moderator on Advancing in Adversity. And thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your time because you could have chosen your time to be elsewhere, but you have decided to be a part of this conversation. We truly thank you. And just really wanted to give you a shout out for just showing up because 80% of success is just showing up. So thank you. Give yourself a round of applause. Give yourself a high five, for being successful people as you are. And look, we just want to go ahead and bring on my co-host, Dani Robinson, licensed social worker. Hey, Dani.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Yeah, so look, you know how we do here. We're going to ask you, how was your day today? One, if you had a great day. Two, if you had a so-so day. If it was a so-so day, what made it a so-so day? Put it in the comment section. We want to hear it. And what are you going to do differently to move that 2 to a 1 tomorrow? What are you going to do differently? And if you had a 1 today, hey, put that in there. What did you do or what happened that made it a 1? And so we could celebrate you because, see, we have to understand that if we want to see more of those successes and wins, we need to celebrate that. We need to continue to have those motivators and those drivers to help us to continue with that win. So why not make sure that you celebrate yourself, but let us celebrate you as well for your 1 day today. So put in the comment section who you are, where you're from, 1 or 2, so that we can go ahead and get this party started. So, hey, want to ask, actually, it's funny. We were talking, Dani and I, before we were starting. Have y'all noticed how bubbly and sparkling Dani Robinson can be? I tell you the truth, she's just amazing. And, she keeps me on my feet, keep me on my toes, and she keeps me cracking up. So let me tell you how professional she is. She's so professional that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. For those who do commentary, who has a platform like this, you never know. It looks great right now, right? But you don't know what could be going on behind the scenes live while we're rolling. So she had me rolling in regards to what was going on when we were doing our segment yesterday. And I tell you the truth, I would have never known if she didn't say it. So what happened, Dani? If you don't mind, enlightening us on how professional you are.
Of course. So, I've had a few people chime in and they're like, oh, what office spaces are you in? It's like, well, you just make things work. Angles work well. Okay, girls, ladies, we know that angles. Okay, angles. But so with getting your angles together, you make sure you capture what you want to capture and try to taper out what you don't. So where I'm sitting, it is a high traffic area within our home. Okay, there's a lot of traffic back and forth because where I'm sitting right now is at the table, the dining room. So the other day, my dad, he was having to get from this side to this side. And he was like, how do I stay off camera? Make sure. So while I'm still, engaging and here and talking with you guys and everything else, all I see out the corner of my eye is an army crawl. And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to look. I'm not going to look because if I look, I'm going to lose it. So, I stayed engaged, stay focused, we'll continue talking and dialogue and, he made it to the other side and well, we had a conversation later. What was that? Yeah. So you just never know. You have to work your angles. Just what you got.
Listen, do the army crawl again. What did Dad do? He was doing this.
He was.
Go ahead. He better use those tactics that he learned. Okay. That's how you do it.
Shout out to you, Daddy.
Come on now. Shout out to you, Dad, for those army crawls across to the other side of the dining room table. So go ahead.
The bloopers.
That was funny. So listen, y'all, we just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Going to check you out right now. And then as I check you out on here, and hey, shout out to Dani Camp. We want to thank you. Hey, Jessica, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you from Texas. Thank you for tuning in. I hope all is well with you and yours. And Dani's Camp, thank you for tuning in as well. We hope all is well with you and yours, everybody. Dani, are you ready for your clap back moment? What's going in the news?
Yes. I mean, I feel like we are just continuing with the theme that we had yesterday. And since we are continuing that, a good question to ask is, have you done your homework today? Have you done the homework? What was the homework? Let's go back to that. What was the homework that Dr. Langley assigned to that? Because I be called out for the homework. Sometimes.
What's the homework that?
The homework was finding those things that challenge you, or doing those things, trying to do something that brings you outside of your comfort zone. That was the homework. So have you participated in the homework? Have you thought about it? Have you worked on it? Have you been looking at anything that's going to bring you outside of your comfort zone or push you a little bit further than you've been challenging yourself in the past? So if not, think about it, put it in the mind, and see what you can do, what steps you can do to get on working on that, because those are important, because us stepping out of our own comfort zone it gives us confidence, gives us insight on things that we couldn't do, opens really doors to see the other things that you can accomplish that maybe you haven't tried before. I think that was if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that a quote from one of the Kennedys? Oh, I can't even remember her name, the one that used to smoke the cigars. I want to say she was like a Mama Kennedy or Grandma Kennedy, but she said, do something every day that makes you afraid.
Oh, are we talking about Eleanor Roosevelt?
Eleanor Roosevelt. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I forget what Kennedy that is, though, that used to smoke cigars, though. What was that?
That Kennedy, Eleanor Roosevelt? Yeah.
Yes, her. Eleanor Roosevelt, yes. Do something every day that makes you afraid. That's very important. It kind of broadens your horizon. I mean, doing different things at school, programs and stuff like that, it's important to expand that, making you a little bit uncomfortable, and just not be afraid to do some things that you might not have done before. All right. But with that said, the clap back. So I saw your city in the news, Dr. Langley.
Oh, you saw Philly in the news?
I see how Philly was, the Philadelphia police were tear gassing a group of trapped protesters, and how officials are now announcing changes after the protest response. I'm just like, what is going, not what's going on in Philly, what's going on in the world, but just the city in particular. So it looks like, that they had fired, I guess, in an area where they were. It said they said right now they're effective immediately. They're declaring that categorical moratorium on the use of tear gas for this dispersal or crowd controls, which includes any person who are peacefully assembling or passively resisting. And that was a Commissioner Outlaw said. And they're evaluating other munitions available to the SWAT personnel. So yeah, apparently the protesters were trapped in an area, and they were blatantly just using tear gas on them. And it's just like, that tear gas is no joke. I mean, I haven't personally experienced it myself, but seeing the response, and you see it's like, it causes all sorts of bodily responses. It's not a lighthearted, just a little gas makes you uncomfortable. No, it can be pretty serious. I mean, you can die from asphyxiation if you can't get actively to oxygen for that. So yeah, no, that was I saw that, peeped that in the news, and you know what? Also going back to Philly, I was listening to the other day. Do you recall? Well, I mean, you probably do recall, but the movement and the bombing that occurred, I think almost maybe 30 years ago now, in Philly.
May 10th, 1985. It's interesting. We, all us Philadelphians, especially, everyone, but like the ones that I grew up with, the young ones, we, every time around that time, around the anniversary of that time, we always talk about where were we, how old were we, and I remember seeing that on the news. I was 8 years old watching that with my family, watching the move happen. But right. Yeah, what happened here?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like they it was in the 60s, 70s, I can't forget. I forget the exact year. It was in 80, right?
1985.
85. Thank you. It was in 85, but they actually it was a Black group that was within a complex of I believe it was apartment building complex, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know exactly, I don't recall the exact details. I was listening actually an interview of one of the last survivors for it, and she was just discussing about how, unannounced, like usually, if the police are going to do something or FBIs are going to do something, they're going to make some announcements, they're going to make some kind of communication. but there was no warning was given. And a helicopter dropped like a satchel of C4 on top of this apartment complex, blew it practically to smithereens. And then the fire department that was there were told not to respond to the activities that were going on. So they saw it blazing, and I think it burned down like several buildings. I think a large part of that block, I think I was burning. I saw it like on both sides of the street. It was horrible.
West Philly, and yeah, Ramona, Africa.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I remember that, and it was such an uproar because, you know, it's almost like there's something that we don't talk about. We acknowledge it when it happens, like when May comes and we remember, but because that was just such a dark period for how it was handled, you know, because even when they dropped that bomb pretty much on these houses, you know, this is like a neighborhood.
Homes.
And the fact that even when people were running out of the houses, whatever, they were shooting them, you know, like whoever was trying to survive and get out of the houses, they got shot. You know, this is like families, children, you know. So Ramona, Africa, I believe her son, they were only living survivors now of that move. And shoot, I'm sure, and especially with what's going on now, talking about how things are handled, especially when it comes to people of color, when it comes to Black people, in comparison, you know, to anyone outside of any person of color, and how things are handled. So yeah, it was very, 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 very sad of a time.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And like you're saying, it's important. While it's difficult, it's important to highlight these travesties that we've experienced and these horrible events that have occurred, because if we do not acknowledge it, if we do not highlight it, if we do not address it, we can't change it. If we are not addressing issues that have happened in the past, they will happen again. We have to have those conversations. We have to have this change. So it's good to hear that, okay, granted, this didn't turn out as bad with what's going on with tear gas, but you have to acknowledge what is not acceptable, what is endangerment from law enforcement and other departments of enforcement, and how not to have them activate in the community, especially in areas of people of color. I was just watching I remember learning about it, but you know, just hearing, I don't think I had heard her first hand accounts, and I didn't even realize that they were shooting people once they actually did come out of the building. That is,
yeah. So then, with that said, everybody, we just thank you for tuning in. This is Dr. Sarah Langley and Dani Robinson, and we're coming to you in regards to advancing in adversity. And this is a part 2 conversation from what we talked about the other day in regards to Black on Black crime, it not happening. No such thing as Black on Black crime. And we wanted to continue with this conversation because you have to understand, it's as we are moving and advancing in adversity, especially with the racism, injustice, inequality that we strive to resolve or to bring to a close, bring it to closure, bring it to resolution, bring it to equality for all. We are looking, instead of us looking for love everywhere else, we have to first start with ourselves. And Dani had talked about this in regards to, you know, why do we say Black on Black crime when is there white on white crime, white on white crime, Asian on Asian crime, Mexican on Mexican crime? You don't really hear that. Why is it said about us, Black on Black crime? And then you have to question, how do you feel about your own? How do you feel about your own self, your own skin that you're in? We were helping you, from a psychological standpoint on really being able to address the undertones, the unspoken rules, the subconscious mindset that you may have and don't even realize about how you feel about your own race, your own skin color. And we first talked about colorism, you know, being pitted against each other in regards to, you know, darker versus lighter. Then we talked about, again, skin that you're in. Do you love yourself? The challenges with self-loathing and self-hatred, and especially for your own kind. And now we had starting to address in regards to the black on black crime as it's said, but to really dispel that, debunk that, let's do a false equivalence. What is that?
Right.
What is that false equivalence? It's amazing the stuff that comes up or came up in this year and last year, because of certain political things. But I'm not here to talk about political stuff necessarily. It's just a matter of we have to unlearn certain things so then we can learn right, and I listened to I was interviewed today for on a podcast. So shout out to you, Dakisha Williams. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. And we were talking about who are like some of my mentors that I follow and I'm inspired by. And one is Reverend Ike. So people from back in the day in the 70s, 80s, where Reverend Ike was not, people's favorite reverend because he was speaking, it seemed like he was talking about money and how to get money and all that, but he was talking about prosperity. And the way that he taught that thing was just amazing. And he had said that, you know what, he has no problem with upsetting us to set us up right. Sometimes we have to now come up with a pattern interrupt. What is that? It just means that something has to be thrown in your pattern to disrupt it, because you're just floating by day to day, not realizing and just existing and just floating without really stopping to take time to center, to regroup, to be present in the moment, to get caught up with everything else, but not getting caught up enough about how you really think, how you really feel, your attitude, your behavior, your posture, your stance, your morals, your values. Do you really know all of these and more? So we really want to address that, dispel, unlearn, to now position you to learn so that you can truly advance in adversity. And I really just want to give a shout out to everybody that's joining in with us in this conversation. Hey, Kimberly from Virginia. She's a junior high school friend. Hey, how you doing, Kimberly? Thank you so much. She said, you look amazing. Thank you, girl. Thank you. That's when you don't do your hair, girl. When you have like 50 braids left to do. But yes, I'm making sure I'm ready for this second wave. Okay, let me tell you, I'm going to have this stuff in for the next 3 months. All right, we are just fine. Me and my daddy being in this house, we survived 3 months. We're going to do another 3. So you make it do what it do. Hey, Carolyn, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate you. Hey, Bishop-elect Yolanda Johnson, WCUer, thank you for tuning in. And Lamar, really appreciate you. Hey, we got our boy Michael Gibson from Delaware. Thank you for tuning in. We see you guys. We see you. He said, have a great discussion tonight. He shared it. Thank you so much, Michael. We really appreciate you. So, Dani, any comments, or anybody, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please put it in the comment section. We really would appreciate you joining in this conversation, as well as on Dani's camp. Put it in the comment section if you're able, or inbox Dani. Let her know your thoughts, comments, so that we can actually, acknowledge you in our time today. So, Dani, thoughts, comments, what do you think?
Black on black crime. Black on black crime, I feel, is a concept, I feel almost of the 80s, right? So I'm thinking crack epidemic. I'm thinking of all the various things, the struggles that we were experiencing at the time. And I think about how, honestly, I associate black on black crime with news reports.
Yeah.
That's what I associate it with. I believe that most of the time when we heard that term black on black crime, that was in the news. That was not necessarily, I don't believe, I could look it up and see if there's actually research that was termed for that to describe that, because it wasn't used to describe any other community of color. And we did know that we were particularly hit hard intentionally by the crack epidemic. So as we discussed yesterday, we were talking about the difficulties of why that took place. There's no other groups that has been categorized of how their own community on community crime. That will tend to happen within a community of itself, usually, but nobody else says Jewish on Jewish crime. They don't say Chinese on Chinese crime, Japanese on Japanese crime. Does that mean every other, country, Chinese on Chinese crime? I don't think they say that. They just say what the crime rate is, where they think the crime came from, and how to rectify, or what resources or what can help manage that. But it's always a little different for the communities of color. So I think that was just a framework of the, I'm thinking TV, I'm thinking Dare, I'm thinking Reagan, I'm thinking crack epidemic. That's what I'm thinking of. And there was a lot of things there was a lot of events going on at one time and that weren't necessarily being addressed. And Adair wasn't necessarily fixing the issue at the time. If y'all remember Reagan and the "this is your brain on drugs" with the egg frying in the pan situation we had going on. So I think that was just a construct that was created. That's all I believe that was. That's not a reality. Again, we were talking about what crime really tends to center around is the lack of resources. That's one of the major issues is, does a community have resources? And if they don't, how do they cope with the lack of the resources? There's not enough that's able to spread around evenly. We don't look at affluent communities and necessarily see those same type of concerns because there is plentiful resources. Right. One of the issues in our community is that we're not in our community, but in our country, is that our resources tend to be monopolized by larger groups that want to conserve what they have. And it's not necessarily, I'm not saying socialism, but it's not necessarily spread among the groups or easily accessed. So there are barriers such as education, employment, availability of employment, gainful employment, and support. A lot of people, they need support. You know, you have families, you have kids, you have moms, you have dads, you have single folks. You have a lot of people that would be able to achieve better if they had the resources available to achieve it. That's why it's not that it's not that Native Americans aren't great people. They don't have as much access to the resources that they need to excel. And we find that in groups of color all across the way, but it's just making sure that they have access to resources, which I think is causing a big discussion. I feel like it's causing a bigger discussion now because the times that we're in. But I feel that people feel like, why do we need to have these conversations? Why do we need to put these things in a place? Why do people need reparations? Why why did we need to do particular things? Why do I remember it was why are we making all these allowances to have people of color in particular institutions? Why do we need to have these quotas? Because otherwise these doors would be closed and there would be no access. So we had to force something in the way, but still, even around that, there's still barriers. So that's the bigger thing. It's not to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's like, no, you consistently put barriers into place to stop and block people of color to getting access that would allow them to elevate.
And then we're going to have to do what your daddy did. You're going to have to go army crawl. Show him, Dani. We got to do the army crawl over
right.
Right?
Yes.
The army crawl. Because
yes.
Dang it. It's like that was a second half of a second half of a second hand cussing right there.
Yeah.
Like, dang it. We have to understand that the bottom line, we talked about that the other day in regards to all things were equal. Pound for pound, maybe this would be a different story. But now it's always questioned, you know, in regards to, well, why should we do this for, you know, we already gave you affirmative action. We already gave you handouts. We already given you government assistance. It's very interesting, though, that many of these big companies, corporations, banks, you know, are getting, you know, welfare for the rich themselves, right. You know, getting these bailouts, getting these tax breaks and things like that. But let it be now giving it to people of color. Although, and we really were to now do some research, who really did benefit from government assistance, you know, when it comes to welfare and things like that. It always shined the spotlight on people of color, Black people, whatever. But if we really would do some research, it kind of seemed like it was the Karens that were getting some help.
They are the largest consumer of welfare services.
The Karens, right? Yeah. So please understand that we always bring it from the mental wellness standpoint. Understand this. Have you ever heard of something called Maslow hierarchy of needs? Please talk back to us. Put it in the comment section. Have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Yes, I'm quizzing you. Who has heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I'm going to tell you what Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Abraham Maslow, he talked about self-actualization, 5 tiers to self-actualize. I'm going to read them off to you. The first, foundational, at the bottom of a pyramid. So think of a pyramid, and at the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation, the thing that's solid at the bottom, the base, the physiological needs. So that has to deal with air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. We have to make sure that that is first and foremost for survival. We have to have that foundation tight, intact, the base to support the other tiers. So you have the physiological needs. Then you have up 1 tier, safety needs. You have personal security, employment, resources, health. We have to make sure that that is leveled out and that is attended to. So you have the physiological needs, you have the safety needs, and then in the middle tier are the love and belonging, connectedness, friendship, family. So connection, intimacy. So you have to have that secure. That's in the middle tier. And then above that is esteem, self-esteem, self-image, respect, strength, freedom. You have that tier. And then finally at top is self-actualization. You are now becoming a true self, a whole self, the best that you can be, you become. Now, for those who have had the their basic needs met, the physiological safety and love met, and even self-esteem, because of abundance, because they were an abundance of all these things, typically it would bear out, or it would seem to show well in Caucasian American communities. You know, those who have had those access to resources, to supplies, the support.
For generations.
For generations. For generations. But when you read the numbers in regards to how much harder it has been for anyone non-white, you know, people of color, Black people, so forth and so on, how even to today, how when it comes to businesses, and this is something that I'm passionate about, you know, in terms of helping women of color in particular, you know, global-minded women, you know, is my thing, like women leadership, women who are in leadership globally. But when you look at it and you were to slice it and splice it to women of color, access to capital, while you have so many in numbers, African-American women or women of color who have done so well numbers wise in regards to starting their businesses, really launching their businesses and enterprises, and you know, going to school, finishing out their schooling and education, but still always they're at the bottom of the totem pole in regards to getting access to capital and not being able to, you know, take their business to another level, or even being able to survive as an enterprise because of lack of something, lack. So as we talk about this, the lack of something really plays part as to, in regards to the different needs that we talk about. If you find that you do not have these attended to, especially the base, the foundation, if you're lacking in, you know, your basic needs when it comes to food, shelter, water, clothing, safety needs, you know, in terms of security and resources, those are the two bottom base foundational structures that we need. If we don't have that, then the rest cannot be. And it keeps us stuck. It keeps us delayed. It keeps us not being able to move forward. So that's truth. And to really clean this up, or to really bring it home, please understand that it's not a matter of us having to ask and beg. It is a matter of us. We always been resilient. You know, we're going to do what we have to do. But why are we still having this conversation generations later, that we still have to do what we have to do, as opposed to making it equal and even, so that now you help these communities get the resources, the supplies, whatever they need to be able to excel, just like any other neighborhood or race or culture or ethnicity. It's a matter of making sure that those needs are met. And I bet you will see a whole heck of a difference if everything was created equal, for real, for real. But what do y'all think? Y'all can talk back to us. Put it in the comment section. What do you think about the hierarchy of needs? Talked about the different levels, the different tiers. What are the basics, for survival that has to be addressed and attended to for us to really get to the place of self-actualization? Y'all can talk back to us. What's y'all thoughts? Hey, Dani, what's your thought about that?
I mean, I absolutely agree. Completely, wholeheartedly.
Snaps. I like snaps.
Yes, I am right. I absolutely agree. Actually, I thought it was so funny when I first read the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because when I saw it down there, it said food, shelter, water, and sex. I said, Maslow. Really? Okay. Maslow was like, look, it's all right there. We all need it. I said, okay. So when people try to check something, I was like, okay, well, let's look at Maslow, just so we know. He said foundation. So that's always funny when that comes up in conversations. But no, definitely, like you're saying, I completely and wholeheartedly agree, because it's all about, anything about growth is about building that solid foundation. You can't build a building without a solid foundation. Childhood is important with the solid foundation. Building, being successful in anything that you're putting yourself into is always important to start at a solid bottom. I think that's what Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, he was all about Daniel's son. Wax on, wax on, wax on, wax off. And Daniel's son was like, look here, Mr. Miyagi, like, I want to, and he was like, no, this is what you need to master right now. So I completely agree. It's always anything about growth, anything about propelling forward is always about making sure that you have something solid to stand on. Because if you don't, you will sink. The foundation will not strong, and it will not be able to hold. It might last for a short period of time. It might last for a little bit of time, but it's not going to be the stability that you need to move forward. And that especially applies, having that for our folks, when we have had barriers after barriers after barriers, just like you were saying, that create such resilience within us that we have not held back, or any group of people, we're not holding back. Oppression has happened, but we keep pressing forward. Barriers pop up, but we're keep pressing forward. It's not going to stop us from propelling and trying to get forward. But it's important that we have these foundational tools that are laid down so that we can continue to be successful, and that we all can be at a similar playing field. I remember there was I think it was like a church group. They did a video of a gentleman. He had like a large group of kids over a field, and then he was just giving them different, what I'm talking about? He was giving them different scenarios. Take a step forward if you've had two parent household. Take a step forward if you didn't have to worry about where your next meal came from. Take a step forward if you had never had to worry about your education. Take a step forward, take a step forward, take a step forward. And then he had everybody turn around and look back. And it says, not that any of you are better from each other, but understand the privilege that you have had that is beyond certain other people, and that your success may not be determined on your skill level. It may just be determined on your access to that foundation that you can propel on, that somebody else has to work to catch up to just to make you where you're at.
Yep. Very good. Very good. It made me think that this is the thing that we have to do. We're just going to do the army crawl like your dad.
Okay, Daddy, what is it? He's like, I'm going to make it to the other side. Just give me some time. Got to pull up my pants and keep on going.
That's right. That's right. So look, y'all. Hey, Dr. Kenneth, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. We really want to make sure that you guys and gals are getting what you need, getting your needs met, getting your basic needs met, getting your questions answered, getting your mindset focused and intact and in view, so that you can advance in adversity, that you could do that army crawl over, in and through adversity. And first being able to regroup, recenter, focus on yourself. How are you thinking? How are you feeling about yourself? I want to be transparent with this. I was challenged today. I was in one of the back rooms in my home, and I was smelling weed outside, hearing the firecrackers going, and looked outside, and I saw these two young guys, two young Black boys, guys, hanging out, just chilling. This is like, in the afternoon, like let's say 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was crazy how I was like, I thought, I'm being honest. I thought the word, because they had on their, their white t-shirt, whatever, had their jeans, blue jeans on. And I tell you the truth, the first thought that came up was thug. And I said, wow, I'm going to talk about this today. I'm going to call myself out on that one. Why? Well, that was the first thought I had. And then to feel some type of way, like, oh, 12 o'clock, what y'all doing out here, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, shouldn't you be doing something? Shouldn't you be at school, or shouldn't you be working, or just chilling, whatever have you? And like the thoughts, automatic thoughts just came. And I said, wow, I got to check myself, and to determine what is my thought about my own people. Now, interesting, I own it. I was going to say it's interesting of what is imprinted in our mindset, because that's what we go by. We go by images that are in our minds. Yeah. Dani had talked about this in regards to, being able, and I'm paraphrasing, things that we see, whether it's on TV, the whole, war on drugs, crack cocaine epidemic or whatever, then they came out with this black on black crime stuff. And even that stuff in terms of the crack, war on drugs was, was very bogus, and it makes me think like, well, why are we still even trying to target people? We got so much worse. We have worse things to attend to and to focus on than, someone who's deciding to be on drugs, or they're doing drugs or whatever, or selling drugs. Like, really, but to stay focused on topic, it's interesting how we have this imprint, this, image. When we think of a watch, we think of something that goes on our wrist. If I were to show you my speaker and I say that this is a watch, you may say, no, this is not a watch, because what your image and your imprint in your mind is a watch, is a wristwatch, a watch that goes on your wrist, not this. So because of now, we get those, what do you call it? You know what I'm talking about, y'all. What's the name of it?
Images?
Mnemonic, like, mnemonic.
Oh, word associations.
Something along those lines, like word association, whatever, something mnemonic, or something that, is now a trigger. So every time you think of, you give a word or a name to something and you see it and it's repeated over and over and over, now that image you have is that. Anything that seems different from it, it doesn't match. So it's interesting, like when we think about people of color or Black people, sadly, the first image that we may have is, good for nothing, thug, hood, and all this stuff. When we think of white people, we think of, perhaps first thought is like, business suit, business, rich, wealthy, successful, because of what has been fed into us. When we're children, clean slate. There isn't anything that's being imprinted. It's now they're in a position that they can be conditioned based on the world. That whole situation, I don't know if Dan, if you heard about this, or everybody, if you've seen this, where I think we may have talked about this before. I can't remember. It was like the little Black boy and little white boy. They were so happy. It was a video, and they were happy to see each other. They ran to each other, hugged each other, and then all of a sudden it was doctored up to say that they took a still image of the little Black boy running ahead of the little white boy, talking about, this is what Black people run from racist people or something like that. And the parents were livid, and I was livid with them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Especially because your president decided to retweet that.
Dr. Lang, we've had this conversation.
I had to put it out there.
Don't throw that man over here, bro.
Don't let me do the army crawl, okay? Don't let me do the army crawl. So now, because of that, like these kids could now have this image of like, okay, well, it says, when you think of white, you think of racist. When you think of Black, you think of whatever, it's like, terrorism or, fear, or it's just crazy. But that's why we're having this conversation, to call it out, call a spade, to own it, to acknowledge, and to now conditioned or unconditioned to now conditioned correctly about our views about ourselves, about our own skin color, about other, and their, and how we image or how we think of them. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have to now start to really first acknowledge or identify first before we make any changes. We have to identify what the thoughts are, what the feelings are, what the images are that we have. So then we can know how to change it, because right now we're going to default to what we know. All we know is what we know until we now provide a different thing to the point it creates choice, an option, a decision. Which way are we going to go? But until then, we have to now really own it and acknowledge and ask ourselves, what do we think about ourselves before trying to advance anywhere in adversity? But y'all talk back to us. What's y'all thoughts to that? Dani, what's your thoughts?
Honey, I'm sorry. I'm over here listening, but I'm giving you mental snaps. Okay, I'm snapping all the way. I really, really am. And it's so true what you're saying, because if you're thinking about, like you said, those association and that conditioning about associating, a stimulus, any stimulus, to something particular. So even what you're talking about, I was just thinking about when you were talking about young kids, it happens even at that age. Remember when we've talked about before the doll test, or the doll experiment they did when showing both, I think it was showing black kids and probably white kids, the black and white doll. Yep. But even at their young and precious and formidable ages, they are having these associations with a black doll. Black kids seeing themselves as bad. They said, which is a bad doll? Which is a good doll? Which is a nice doll? Which is the mean doll? Associating the mean, the bad with the black doll. Their parents did not tell them this. They didn't do that. These are just images and associations that they're picking up within our culture and our society, because they're just sponges. They're just soaking up what they see around them. Nobody's like telling them. They're just soaking up the environment, soaking up our society. And our issue is that while we as Blacks experience it, it's our experience. I think that it's difficult for many whites to understand or even accept that experience, because they have a different experience. They don't associate it to what they're going through, because they're like, how is it? No, our experience is different than yours. And you just need to take our word for it. or be like reading Rainbow. Don't take my word about it. Go read about it. We have plenty of documentaries, books, interviews. We got it out there. It exists. We can't deny it, just because it is not your experience. Yeah. I mean, we can go on and on.
I know we can go on, right? I mean, hey, Lawrence. Hey, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We really appreciate you all just tuning in and helping us to have this conversation. And everybody that's tuning in on Dani's side, thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. So how do we bring this home? How we bring it to a close? We already been giving you homework assignments, and we don't want to keep giving it to you. We want to make sure that you're getting the ones that we gave you done, right? But this is to really have you to have a conversation first with yourself, to be able to call out some things and to really question. It's just for the sake of getting better. It's not for you to feel bad or to beat yourself up, but to be able to say, this is what's going on. This is how I'm thinking. How do I now change this narrative? How do I do different to get a different result? And you do just that. First, it's a decision. Decide that you're going to sit and you're going to reflect. You're going to give yourself a few minutes each and every day before you start your day, just to kind of check in with yourself. Practice presence. Practice being in the present moment. We always are either to the left or to the right, meaning, and I'm not talking about the politics stuff, the left wing and the white wing. I'm talking about, depression and sadness and trauma and sorrow, things that have already happened that we can't change. And then we're on the other side, anxiety, future issues that we have yet to even discover or go through. And we're already worried about that, trying to calculate and trying to, be methodical and trying to figure out how to, make sure that we got our I's dotted and our T's crossed. But when we do all that, and then when the situation come up, we probably were still prepared for it, after all that, so we just have to leave that in the future and let the future take care of itself. But we need to make a decision to be present for today, so that we're not floating by, that we're not just always putting our time and attention to everyone else and not enough on ourselves. Here was the opportunity, man. You know, talking on the interview today and being interviewed on the podcast, you know, we were talking about how taking full advantage during this time of being sheltered in place at the time of this recording, and waiting for things to reopen, but to also take full advantage of things that you couldn't take advantage of in terms of being able to appreciate, having a time of gratitude and appreciation. Bring yourself back to center and be grateful that you are alive. You know, we can lament and mourn accordingly, but then it comes to a place where you just have to be thankful for the fact that you may not be where you want to be, but you're not where you used to be. You know, you may not have what you want to have, but look, darn it, you're here to be able to get it and to attain it. It's all about the matter of the mind. You need to now really take the time to come to know who you are, decide that. What are you thinking? What are your standards? What are your morals? What are your values? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? And then from there, after making that decision, start positioning yourself accordingly. And if you need help with that in terms of accountability, the right social groups, the right connections, the right people just to help to support you and to nurture you and to water you and to see you shine and to challenge you. Look, it's not about trying to be around, you know, being the smartest person in the daggone room. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to find a new circle so that that will give you to stretch and to grow and to go up to the next level. You know, it's not about nursing your ego and not growing. You know, Les Brown talked about that in regards to we're such great beings. How can we be such great beings or having this great calling on our lives, having a small mind and trying to keep it in? And it's like, you know, you're just this adult baby that's like still trying to stay small, but it's like you have outgrew the clothes, you outgrew the diapers, you outgrew that stuff. It is time to accept the returns of the and the rules of the engagement. It is what it is. You're here on purpose, and it's time for you to prepare. We're here to upset you, to set you up right. Make your decision, check in with yourself, be present in the moment, get to know your power and your strength, you know, your discernment, your perceptiveness, sharpen that, be around the right people that's going to challenge you, hold you accountable, help you to get to the next level. But you have to do the work as well. Take responsibility and ownership, call the thing a thing, even within yourself. Check in how you feel about yourself, your skin that you're in, your own self-esteem, your own self-image. Is it healthy? Do you have your hierarchy of needs met? Are you at that place of self-actualization? Do you need help with that? You can always call us and check in with us. If you need us to help you through that, make sure that you inbox us, because we're here to best serve and support you so that now you are ready after you went through that whole thing, that whole process, to now be in position for the practicality. How can you go about trying to be practical and want to make things happen? You want to make a business happen. You know, you want to make this certain amount of money, but your mindset ain't right. It's not ready for that. It's not going to last. It's not about just getting and trying to get it quick and trying to get it easy and simple and short-lived. If you didn't make the time to do the work to make sure that you are now mentally prepared to sustain. Anybody can start a business. Anybody can do anything, but it's about not just starting something, but finishing it, crossing the finish line, not just getting to the finish line, but crossing it. And at the end of the day, having the mental health and the mental fortitude to be able to sustain whatever you're about to go into or you're already doing, then it's a matter of making sure that you sustain it by way of, because of your mindset, you're able to do certain things before you can do it again. You can apply those principles, those values, those standards that you hold dear and true, because you were able to unlearn certain things and get unconditioned to now get reconditioned the right way by having these conversations, by showing up and making sure that you allow us to help you to position accordingly so that all in all, you can advance in adversity. So, hey, I hope that this was helpful for you guys. And we hope that at the end of the day, with this whole Black on Black crime, that we were at least able to upset you, to set you up right in that respect. Let's stop that whole Black on Black crime stuff, because we don't realize what that is saying to our subconsciousness. That is really what I want to drive home. What you think about yourself. See, you think that, you know, when you're thinking about someone, you could be hating on them, or you're throwing shade, or you're clapping back at them, or you're feeling some type of way about them. you're projecting something about yourself. There's something about them that really is showing up in yourself that you don't like. And it's so easy to, you know, cast stones at other people, but it's not easy to throw those stones at ourselves, right? Because we don't want to be hurt. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to be in pain. But if you want to be mature, if you want to be disciplined, if you want to have self-control, if you really want to really have a good, healthy ego, like ego strength about yourself, I'm telling you the truth, do the work. It's time to now really check in with yourself and expose yourself. And yeah, it's easier said than done, but it's not impossible. It's just a matter of having a different perspective, shift your mindset. So that at the end of the day, and I keep saying end of the day, so at the end of the day, you are fully prepared for what is to come after all of this is over. So yes, make sure that y'all position yourselves right, make some good decisions that's going to be favorable. It was a saying, a friend of mine said this, I don't know if he got this from somewhere. I'm going to take it. I'm going to say it's from me, but something along the lines like, you know, do things today that, something along the lines of do things today that will make you happy tomorrow. Oh, or like, you know, like your tomorrow self will be happy and proud of. Mm-hmm. And don't do things that your self tomorrow will regret. Right. So make sure that you do things that's going to make your tomorrow self happy that you made that decision. And I don't have anything else. I think that, you know, I gave it to them enough. You think, Dani?
Oh, you dropped the mic, Springer. Took them around, you let them hustle, and then you brought them on right back.
I'm inspired by the army crawl. See, right? I was doing army crawl all day today. That's all that was. The army crawl.
Shout out to Dani.
That's it. All right, y'all. So, Dani, any final thoughts? Want to take us home?
You know what? I definitely agree with all. It's like you're saying, the things are just the actualization. All of this about that foundation, about bringing that foundation in, or even if you have a good foundation, just fortifying it, making it stronger. That's always about that checking in with yourself. How do you feel about yourself? This is always about that improvement, refining and reaching that growth that you need to get you where you want to go. There's always those steps and those building blocks that you have to get you where your dreams are, where your goals are. This is all just meant to make you stronger, develop that foundation, or develop that next platform, which you need to step on to get to where you're trying to get to. So it's all loving encouragement.
Yes. Yes. Yay. The new Jerry Springer, passing the baton, right? All right, everyone. Well, thank you for your time. Look, we hope that you found value. Please share this, because sharing is caring, and you never know, you just might save a life in the process. So you do your due diligence and you go ahead and share this out. And we thank you and appreciate you and your time and just showing up, because if it wasn't for you, there would not be this right now. So thank you so much, everyone. Please, y'all tune in to our final Advancing in Adversity. We are going to bring it home and go out with a bang. So you make sure that y'all show up, tell your friends, your families, your frenemies, everybody, you know, cat, doggy, everybody. Make sure that y'all army crawl y'all way into this tomorrow, okay? And we look forward to being of service to you. If y'all need us, you know where to find us, inbox us, so that we can have a conversation on how we can best support you outside of this collective, outside of this forum, okay? We'll be definitely at your service. This is Dr. Sarah Renee Langley with the Dani Robinson, licensed social worker. And we look forward to talking with you again. Y'all have a great one. Thanks again.